There we go. Okay, there we go. So welcome to the Seneschal position overview and Q&A. We have a couple of people who have joined to be able to help answer questions. Her Excellency Uliana, previous Seneschal of the Barony of Namron, and Senor Lorenzo Martin, my predecessor as Seneschal, has also joined us. So the very first thing is requirements for office are pretty standard, like with the rest of the officer positions. You have to be 18 years or older, have a paid sustaining or family membership. You cannot be dually serving as treasurer or as landed nobility to be Seneschal. And then also for us, because we have members at large in our financial committee, you can't be a member at large and a Seneschal. But if you're a member at large, you can apply to be Seneschal. That's okay.
That was aimed at me.
So, and then just a brief overview of the responsibilities of the Seneschal. Primarily, just like any other officer position, it is primarily an administrative post. So we're responsible for submitting monthly reports, following up, to help remind officers to submit their reports. Waivers have to be submitted, and so we kind of poke and follow up on that. Seneschals are responsible for reviewing and signing contracts for things like site rentals, any other weird things that we might have contracts for. In Namron, for example, we have shed rentals, and so we have contracts that have to be renewed annually for those. And then also we post to open for bids and officer applications. Seneschals also have oversight of events, even though we always look for event stewards who act as deputies of the Seneschal. Ultimately, if the event steward has a question, the Seneschal, needs to be available to answer those and to assist with those, and to ensure that everything that we're doing for the event is in accordance with policy, such as like submitting Black Star ads and any particular activities that we're holding at the event. The Seneschal has oversight of social media. Even if you have a social media deputy, it's the Seneschal's ultimate responsibility to make sure that we are in compliance with both Kingdom and Society social media policies. The same thing goes for the newsletter. It is a mandatory requirement for groups. And so in the absence of a chronicler, the Seneschal publishes the newsletter. We are super fortunate in Namron that we have had just a slew of good chroniclers who've cranked out some really nice newsletters. And then another key responsibility of Seneschals is to conduct meetings. Depending on the group, some groups, the Seneschal runs the business meeting and the populace meeting. That happens really frequently in any group that's not a barony, because it's just the Seneschal. And so in some groups, they even combine those. In a barony, though, we have landed nobility. And so that kind of gets worked out between the Seneschal and the landeds. For example, when I became Seneschal, we had a meeting. Our landed nobility we had a meeting together, and they run the populace meeting and I run the business meeting, and it works out beautifully because it's a division of labor. It's really nice to do that. And also then the populace doesn't have to see the same face all the time. Plus they get to see Alice more, which is way better than just listening to me. Yeah. The other thing that probably people are hesitant about becoming Seneschal for is that we are the line of contact for conflicts and complaints. So occasionally, most of the time, most things can be resolved pretty easily. There are a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, things like that. And so it's super quick resolution, to get that fixed. Every once in a while, some mediation is necessary. And then in some cases, complaints require escalation. Though the one thing that's come up a few times this year that I'll just mention super briefly is banishment-worthy actions. In those cases, A local and regional seneschal have the same authority as any member of the populace, and it's limited strictly to this. You can report it, and that's it. We don't have a hand at all in those types of adverse actions. They are sent to kingdom and dealt with according to corpora and to law on how those are handled. So, sounds easy enough, right? Yes. Well, the beautiful thing is that there's tons of training and resources available. Obviously, Roundtable, the Seneschal warranting class is fairly thorough. And then there's usually also a Seneschal meeting where additional questions are answered and other topics are covered. But the key pieces are always going to be the Seneschal handbook. The most recent iteration, I think, was written by Master Modius, and it's very thorough. I mean, it goes through step by step in very clear language about what our responsibilities are as a local group Seneschal. Corpora has some more pieces of information that, you know, are good to be familiar with. And then, of course, kingdom law, financial policies, and social media policies. And the wonderful thing about all of these is that they're available online. You can download them. I have also added copies of every one of them into the Google Drive, the Seneschal's Google Drive, which is the next thing that I'm going to kind of talk about. I've gone through and made folders for specific types of resources, like the handbooks, just the Seneschal stuff. All the other officers, it helps to kind of be familiar with the other offices, but ultimately those officers are responsible for knowing those rules and communicating with you to help you out with that stuff. Also in the Seneschal's Google Drive for Namron, there are a few specific documents. Since Anne-Marie's here, I'll pick on her, but Medieval Fair, the demo, is a little different than other demos that we do. We have a lot more steps that we have to take, and they start really early. So Med Fair is typically the end of March, beginning of April every year. In a normal non-COVID year, that process starts around September or October when performer applications open. So I wrote a document that breaks it down step by step, has all the information and passwords and stuff to log into the Medieval Fairs MIS system to be able to do that. Also applying for insurance certificates. Normally we get them in January. They're available, sent out. They're on the SCA website and they're sent out to the Seneschals. The one for Medieval Fair has one block that's a little different, where we have to add information that we don't normally do for other sites, although we could. And so anyway, that's all in there in just like a copy and paste. You just copy it into the email, and because if you send it in wrong, they'll just say no, or they'll send you an invoice. You don't get a lot of feedback, so I tried to put that in. There's also copies of the shed contracts, and then a couple tutorials like how to reset email passwords for officers, and how to update and make changes in the Google group for the financial committee, because that's a really new thing. And I think there might be one other group in Onstiora that uses that. It's worked out pretty well. It's kind of weird. So I don't know, maybe a future Seneschal and the B&B will want to get rid of it. That's kind of odd. I also have like this really nifty spreadsheet for waivers tracking, because you get CC'd on your waivers from your officers when they send them to the waiver secretary. And then the waiver secretary has a document that's on the Kingdom website that's updated. And so mine has little columns so that you can check and make sure that everything matches up. Because when you submit your monthly report, you have to list each individual practice that was held and whether or not waivers were turned in and why or why not. So I personally found it useful to track that as you go, but different people organize things differently. So, and then the same thing, I created an officers roster that has like membership numbers and expirations. It also has columns for when they stepped up and when, if they go a full 2 years, their position should be announced to make sure that there's enough time to have the position filled before their term runs out. There were a couple other things that I'm working on. There were like small random things, and I don't really remember what they are off the top of my head. So hopefully they'll get done. A lot of things have been added to the Barony of Namron website too, as far as documentation to be able to refer to. And then the other thing that I've done is gone through the Seneschal's Google Calendar. And so at the beginning of each month, it has reminders for things that typically should be done that month. So some things are different, like October 2020, on the 1st, it says, you know, medieval fair contracts should be, or medieval fair, medieval fair applications should be open, whatever. Obviously that didn't happen in 2020 because it's gonna be virtual for 21. But things like that. And then officer reports, not every officer files a report every month. Some are quarterly. So there's reminders on all of those in there. Like when rough estimates of times when like a bid for events like Beltane event steward should open so that it closes in time to give them 6 months to prepare for the event. Some of these are just ideal. Some of them are just like, hey, I needed to be thinking this, you know, around this time, you know, so anyway, a lot of it's in there. So, and then Gmail is currently like super divided into folders and everything's in there, but the search option will pull up everything. So there's just like tons and tons and tons of physical resources to support someone in the role of Seneschal. But the best resources are your recent local Seneschals. And the only reason I specify recent is because laws and policies change all the time. And someone else might not be quite as up to speed on it, although they can certainly help with things like mediation, you know, give you advice on how to do that. And your Northern Regional Seneschal. He didn't show up, so I get to pick on him too. Charles has been like a great resource for me, and your Kingdom Seneschal too. So those things are there. There is a Seneschal group on Facebook where you get some updates now from Brian. So he's using that just to kind of push some things out. And Mistress Elsa is really good about posting things in there and in the social media group about anything that's social media relevant. So it's a super easy job. I don't know. It's a lot of fun. And this is the point where we were going to open up for just open questions and answers. So I don't know if anybody here has any questions for me or just in general about being a Seneschal. Now's your chance. Lorenzo, make something up.
I don't have any questions, but I made a list of things to talk about.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, my soup just came here, so.
I know, I see that.
So the thing that Charles would say if he was here, and I don't remember exactly how he says it, is the #1 job of the Seneschal is the health of the barony or the health of the group that you're in. One of the big jobs of being a Seneschal is to kind of be a cheerleader for the people that are in the barony, the populace. And I think it's super important to allow them to do the jobs that they've been given or the jobs that they're asking for, because that creates a situation where they are more likely to want to help in the future. They feel like they're taking on a part and they own a part of the barony or the group that they're in. Another one that I wrote down is moderating reports, like you talked about. Just making sure that they get the reports in each month. Being kind whenever they don't get them in, because they don't get them in every month. It's just, it doesn't work that way. But I mean, we all have lives, and just helping them and making sure that all that gets done in proper time. Working with the B&B, you know, when I was Seneschal, we had to change from previous B&B to current B&B. So being a part of the transition and trying to help with that transition, trying to help the B&B that you're working with at the time, having a good relationship with us, whoever's the B&B at the time. You answer a lot of questions, which isn't a bad thing, because the next one I wrote is you learn so much about the SEA in the job as Seneschal. it seemed like every day I would have 3, 4, 5 questions from people in the barony or outside of the barony or people that are interested in the SCA. So you learn a lot about the SCA by researching those questions that people ask. You get to make a difference. One of the things I love the most about being Seneschal is you actually get to make a difference in the group that you're with, and even outside of the group. You know, the principality was up and coming, or the ideal of the principality was up and coming when I was Seneschal, and just getting to sit in on those meetings and offer comments on how to make that better or how to make your barony better is pretty fun and amazing. And the last one that I have is stepping down when you realize that your time is up, whether it's by a timeline or just the fact that you have things going on and you're not going to be effective at that point. So knowing when to step down is very, I think that's in the book, in the handbook too, is just stepping back when you know that it's important to do so.
Thank you. That was excellent commentary.
Thank you.
I want to kind of go back and touch on a couple things that you said. The part about letting people do what it is that they volunteered for. There are times that it's really hard because, you know, something's got to get done. And if you're a type A personality, it's really hard to step back and let people do it in their own time. But I know I haven't always succeeded, but I've tried really hard to let officers do their jobs. And it's important to do that because people don't volunteer for things because they don't want to do them. You know, they volunteer because they want to do it and they want to be part of what's going on. And so it's important. Every once in a while I have to smack my own hand to go, no, stop, back up. Julie's laughing.
I was terrible at that. And the funny thing is Koya is the one that like smacked my hand enough that I was like, oh, I need to let people do what they're supposed to do.
It's hard because I think sometimes as Seneschal, you do take on this sort of like feeling of, oh my God, I have to make sure everything gets done. And that's not really true. Interestingly, it is a joint responsibility of the Seneschal and the landed nobility to make sure that officers are doing the things that officers need to do. It doesn't mean that officers have to do every single thing that I think they should do. It just means that they have to do the things that are necessary to keep their office moving forward and to make sure that we're in compliance with certain laws and rules that we can't argue with, you know, and there's really not that much of that. So it's a good thing. Gosh, there was something else that you said that like really went ding, ding, ding. What was point number 3?
Well, I didn't go in order. Health of the barony, delegation, moderating reports, working with B&B, answering questions, and stepping down when you need to, and being a cheerleader.
Yeah, I really like that cheerleader comment. That's really good. It was good. So we should get Pom Poms, Seneschal Pom Poms. I'm going to let that one go right there. But yeah.
You could make some out of macrame for your successor.
There we go. I could do that. I won't, but I could. The one thing about being in a barony as Seneschal is that, you know, we do have landed nobility to work with. And that was something that you mentioned, Lorenzo, about going from one B&B to the next. And I'm not talking about Kylie and Andy versus Leon and Mikolai. I'm talking just in general, because when I worked as a contractor for the Army, it was through multiple like changes of command and stuff. And it's something that you kind of have to be really flexible about, because people have such different personalities and different ways of doing things. Even within one set of landed nobility, one might be like really type A and one's really type B. I don't know any landeds like that personally. And so I think the thing is that even if you don't necessarily like them, you have to find a way to work with them. And that goes for the whole officer corps, we're all focused on the same mission of, keeping things running fluidly so that everybody can pursue the dream. And everybody messes it up sometimes. We're all human, and so we have to give ourselves grace and give other people grace. So as Seneschal, probably one of the most important resources you can have is a sounding board, a person who you can talk to. For example, my husband, believe it or not, has to listen to me a lot. I don't share confidential information with him, but he's there. He knows when I'm stressed out about something, and so we'll do other things, to like lighten my stress load. Fortunately, we haven't had too many incidences this year that were really that stressful, although there were a couple that were pretty up there, like the onset of COVID. That one was pretty great. But again, when you're in a barony, your B&B are going through the same thing. So you need to have good, like, open lines of communication with them, because most everything that you address as a Seneschal, you can discuss with them. There are going to be like one or two random things here and there that are pretty confidential that you kind of keep in your chain of command, but that's pretty rare. I can only think of like one or two times that's happened all year. Most everything else, even if it wasn't something that they needed to directly act on, I made sure they knew about it, because it does affect the health of the barony. It's things that they need to know for the morale and what's going on. And they've been really good in return. Like they have let me know when something was going on where somebody had reached out to them and they'd already talked to them about it and everything's fine now, but they kind of let me know, especially if it was something that maybe was a thing that I could fix, because it was a me problem.
Well, and there's a lot of times that especially with some of the conflict resolution things, especially, that they may end up telling more than one person. So they may start with the Seneschal and then the B&B, or they may start with the B&B and then the Seneschal. So if it's something that confidentiality wise you can share, it's kind of nice to give the other a heads up, because a lot of times it'll be coming to them.
That's true. Then you don't get blindsided by something big like this year.
All of this year.
Yeah. It's been a great year. It really has. And we're going to have a year in review in December, and it's going to be so positive that y'all are going to forget that COVID even happened. Don't you shake your head at me, Lorenzo. Seriously though, a lot of good stuff happened this year. And so that's why I want to do that, to remind everybody and get everybody excited for next year, because whether it's virtual or in person, there's so much that we can still do. There's so much camaraderie, that's always the thing to focus on. And so that's what I would also like recommend to anyone who is ever considering being a Seneschal at any level, whether it's for a canton or kingdom, is that while there are some adverse things that you have to deal with, there's a whole lot of good you see. You're really behind the scenes and you get sneak peeks into things. People will message you and go, hey, I'm going to put this person in for an award. Do you know, if they have it, or if they have a peer relationship,
Okay.
and you get all excited about it. It's pretty cool. You get to learn a lot of really good stuff. Lorna, Uliana, do you have anything?
There may be loud noises in the background. Sorry.
Alice can add stuff too.
Yeah, well, she was playing the piano a minute ago, so you might get like little music. You both covered, I think, most of what I would say or was going to say. Communication with the B&B, like I've seen that from both sides now, and that is very important. And getting lined, discussing at the beginning what is going to be Seneschal area versus B&B area, because there's things that are definitely one or the other, but there's a lot of gray area in the middle. And kind of like Colfina said, like that varies based on group. Like some groups the B&B is very active in this aspect, where another that's a Seneschal thing, and just getting that worked out helps a lot. And then also, sorry, it's being really loud. Each Seneschal is going to do things differently. So the way I did it wasn't the way Lorenzo did it or the way Colfina did it. You have that handful of things that have to get done, but how you make that happen can be your own. So just, you don't have to do what I did or Colfina did or Lorenzo did, as long as the job's getting done. So those are the big things I could think of. So.
Yeah, that's a big one. There's no such thing as like shoes to fill. I mean, there just really isn't. And that's true for any officer position or royalty or, you know, anything in the SCA, is we all have our own personalities and our own experiences and our own skill sets that we bring to a position. And it's also one of the things that keeps the SCA fresh, you know, is that we have this constant influx of new ideas and new perspectives. So, and this year, because so much of it was virtual and we weren't having events, I had time to put together some of these supplementary documents that another Seneschal wouldn't have had time for. Like, I didn't have to go to an event and, you know, make sure everything was going okay. I mean, I didn't even have to do med fair this year. So, I mean, it makes me kind of the lame Seneschal, but so I was able to do some things, and there are also things that I enjoy doing, whereas I know a lot of people don't like writing and don't want to do that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's fine too. And some people don't use Google Calendar. That's fine. I mean, you know, whatever system you have that works for you to make sure that, you know, you meet the deadlines. Some of them are more flexible than others. You know, there's a few deadlines, like for the Black Star. If it's not in, it's not in. It's not going to happen. But there's some others where, you know, if you're a day late, it's not really the end of the world, you know, or a couple days later. Hopefully not too much longer than that. But so, excuse me, I think that that's a big point of consideration for anyone considering any officer position, is to not hesitate to bring your own flair to it and do it your way. And you can even like sing the Sinatra song while you do it. And when you're done with it, maybe that should be a requirement for step down for officers. You have to sing My Way. We'll let that start with the next one. I'm not doing it. Y'all don't want me to sing. So. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Right with salsa.
Say again?
Sorry, I was talking to Bonnie.
Oh, okay, I thought I heard something about salsa, and I was like, I mean, you know, yeah, salsa's good. Okay, well then, just to quickly recap, we talked about the requirements for holding the office, an overview of the responsibilities, which are, it seems like a lot. It's not really a lot once it starts happening. You know, it's just a couple things a month that you have to do in general as far as administrative stuff. But there's a huge collection of training and support resources and plenty of people to talk to and support anyone in the role. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of people to ask questions of, all the way up to society. I mean, we've had to run things all the way up to get okay on things, and the response times have been great, and people have been super helpful. It's been fantastic. And then if you want to apply for Seneschal, visit the Barony of Namron website and click on the Seneschal page and go down to the bottom. Has the instructions. You can use the apply online option and make sure that under position applied for, you put Barony of Namron Seneschal, because there is a regional Seneschal position open right now and you don't want your application to go the wrong place. It's better to fill my position than Charles's, is all I'm saying. I mean, you know, he can extend for another 6 months. It'll be fine. And then you just submit your membership information to the officer application coordinator, and that email is also on the website. So thank you everyone who came and for your participation and your assistance. and I will get this saved and uploaded so that people who missed it but are interested can watch it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hi, it's Golfina again. One thing that I meant to discuss during the information and Q&A session was deputies. I've been very fortunate to have had excellent deputies while I've been Seneschal. And you can have deputies fill whatever roles that you need to, just keeping in mind that you're ultimately responsible for making sure that things are done. For example, I have a social media deputy who handles all of our social media platforms, monitors our analytics, and helps produce content for those channels. I have a calendar events deputy who has a dual purpose role. She keeps a database and is continuing to build a database of potential sites that we can use to hold events. And she contacts them and gets more information on them. She does not sign contracts, I do, but she gathers all the information, does all the legwork, and it's just a huge help. The other thing that she does that supports the social media deputy is she creates all of our events for posting on Facebook to make sure that we have all the proper little snippets of information that are supposed to be disclaimers, that it has all the correct disclaimers and things, and that we have some continuity on those. Then I also have an emergency replacement deputy, as you absolutely should, so that if I were out of commission for a few days or a week or so, they can step in. It's a position that's traditionally held by somebody who has previously been a Seneschal, but it's not always. If you know someone who is interested in doing it and who is really good at understanding policy and things, and that you trust them to handle that kind of stuff, then absolutely, they don't have to have been a previous Seneschal to be your ER. And then I also had an ad hoc deputy who assisted with a couple of special projects that weren't like in the normal scope of things, but popped up, and that was super helpful too. If I had had a fifth deputy, I would highly recommend like somebody to help take minutes for meetings that you're running, or hand that task off to one of your other deputies, because it is super hard to conduct an effective meeting and take notes that you need to produce minutes if that's something that you're wanting to do as Seneschal. So I apologize to my deputies that I did not give you your props in the meeting, because you have all been super awesome, and I could not have done everything that I did this year without your help and your support. So strongly recommend deputies, but I would add the caveat that if you have deputies, and this is for any officer position, if you ask someone to be your deputy, please give them things to do. If you need help with delegation, reach out to somebody and ask them for suggestions. Because if someone volunteers to be your deputies, because they genuinely want to help, so please make sure that you give them some specific things to do, and helping with tracking things, and there's just so many different options. But anyway, that's it. I just wanted to make sure that I put in some information about deputies, because they are so important to your success as an officer. Thanks.